Elara adjusted the strap of her dress as she stepped into the grand hall, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. The chandeliers above glimmered like stars fallen into the room, their light dancing across the polished marble floors. Tonight was her blind date, set up by a well-meaning friend who insisted she deserved someone special. Elara had agreed with hesitation, imagining a quiet dinner filled with polite conversation and perhaps a few smiles. She certainly hadn't expected what awaited her. The hall was alive with laughter and conversation. Nobles, merchants, and travelers mingled under the golden light, their faces painted with smiles that hid secrets. Elara scanned the tables carefully, looking for the one her friend had reserved. She was late, of course, and the noise of the crowd made it harder to focus. Finally, she spotted a table with a single place set, and without a second thought, she slid into the chair. Across from her sat a man who seemed to command the room without saying a word. He was tall, with dark hair that fell over his forehead and eyes so sharp they seemed to see straight into her soul. His presence was magnetic, unsettling in the most thrilling way. Elara felt a shiver run down her spine as he lifted his gaze toward her, an unreadable expression crossing his face. "Good evening," he said, his voice low and smooth, like velvet brushing against steel. "Good evening," Elara replied, her voice slightly trembling. She was careful to sit upright, though every instinct in her body urged her to relax. There was something about him, danger perhaps, or power, that made it impossible to look away. The man leaned back, observing her with a curious intensity. "You look different from what I expected." Elara blinked, unsure how to respond. "I could say the same. You're intriguing." A faint smile played at his lips. "Intriguing, yes. Dangerous, perhaps." His eyes glimmered as if he were teasing her, though she could not tell if he was serious. The conversation began cautiously, like a dance. Each word they exchanged was measured, layered with unspoken questions and subtle challenges. Elara felt herself drawn into it, fascinated by the way he spoke, the way he watched her every reaction. There was a tension in the air, a magnetic pull she could not resist. As they talked, she noticed small details that made the room around them seem unreal. The flickering candlelight cast shadows that shifted like living things. Servants moved quietly in the background, their eyes not quite hiding the wariness that made Elara's stomach twist. Something about this place, and the man sitting across from her, felt larger than life, as though the world had been painted in sharper colors just for this moment. "What brings you here tonight?" he asked, leaning forward slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. Elara hesitated. Should she tell him the truth? That she was here because of a blind date? Or should she allow some mystery to remain? She chose the latter. "Curiosity," she said finally, "and perhaps a little hope." "Hope," he repeated as if tasting the word. A dangerous thing in a world like this. Elara felt a flicker of unease, but it was mingled with something far more exciting. His words hinted at danger, yes, but also at knowledge and experience that she had never known. She was not afraid, not completely. Instead, she felt alive in a way that few moments in her ordinary life had ever made her feel. They continued to speak, their words weaving around each other like threads in a tapestry. Stories were exchanged, half-truths and jokes mingling seamlessly. Elara laughed at one of his dry remarks, and for the first time the man's expression softened, revealing a brief flicker of something almost human beneath the carefully controlled mask. "I have a feeling," he said after a pause, "that you are not like the others who come here." "And I have a feeling," Elara replied, her voice steadier now, "that you are not like the men my friends have tried to set me up with." The corners of his mouth curved in a faint, knowing smile. "Perhaps that is why we met tonight," The words hung between them, carrying weight that neither of them fully understood. There was a sense of fate in the air, an invisible thread pulling them together, and yet something warned her that this connection came with shadows she could not yet see. The evening wore on, and the hall began to empty slowly. Alara realized she had laughed more in the past hour than she had in the past month. She had allowed herself to forget the world outside this room, to be present in a way she rarely allowed. And yet, beneath her joy, a quiet unease lingered, like a shadow brushing at the edge of her vision. The man across from her stood, his movement fluid and deliberate. "May I walk you out?" he asked. Alara nodded, her pulse quickening. As they left the hall, the night air was cool against her skin. The city outside was quiet, the streets empty, but for the occasional figure slipping through shadows. She felt a thrill she could not name, a mixture of anticipation and fear. As they approached the carriage waiting at the entrance, the man's hand brushed hers in a gesture that was casual yet intimate. Her breath caught. "I hope to see you again," he said softly, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart hammer. I would like that," she replied, though her voice wavered under the weight of his gaze. As she stepped into the carriage, Alara felt a strange sensation, as if she were leaving one world and entering another. The man's presence lingered, a shadow that followed her even as the doors closed. Unseen by her, a figure watched from a darkened alley across the street. Cloaked in shadow, the observer's eyes were sharp and calculating. Every movement of the pair in the carriage was noted, every word remembered. A threat, hidden but very real, now attached itself to the unsuspecting Alara, and the threads of her ordinary life began to unravel. Inside the carriage, Alara leaned back, trying to steady her racing heart. She thought of the man who had captivated her so completely, of his dark eyes and the strange mix of danger and charm that surrounded him. She had no idea who he truly was, nor the empire of secrets and power he commanded. She only knew that something irreversible had begun. And somewhere in the shadows, Dante, her mysterious companion, watched the carriage disappear into the night. His face, always composed, betrayed a flicker of something rare, concern. Ilara's life was now entwined with his, and the choices of the night would echo far beyond this fleeting encounter. The carriage turned a corner, and for the first time, Alara felt the weight of the unknown pressing in. She thought of the soft light of the ballroom, the warmth of laughter, and the thrill of conversation that had felt like magic. She did not yet understand the storm she had stepped into, nor the man who had unknowingly claimed a part of her heart. And in that instant, the world seemed both larger and smaller than she had ever imagined, a place where fate had a hand, and danger and desire were inextricably bound. Cliffhanger. As the carriage rolled on, a shadow detached itself from the alley. A whisper of movement, silent but purposeful, as someone, or something, had taken notice of Alara. The night had only begun, and the threads of her destiny were tightening in ways she could never have imagined. The morning sun spilled over the city, turning the wet streets into mirrors of gold and gray. Alara walked briskly, her mind replaying the previous night, the ballroom, the chandeliers, the strange, piercing eyes of the man she had accidentally sat across. The memory of him made her pulse quicken, a mixture of curiosity and something deeper she could not yet name. She had no idea who he really was, but she could not shake the feeling that her life had shifted in the smallest, most irrevocable way. A knock at her door startled her. When she opened it, she found a small envelope, sealed with black wax. Her name, written in elegant, precise handwriting, stared back at her. Inside, a simple card read, "Meet me at the Overlook tonight. The city will show its true face. D. Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she held the card. The letter both thrilled and frightened her. Who was this man who seemed to know exactly how to draw her into his world? Yet despite the unease, her heart urged her to go. She could not resist the pull. Night fell quickly, wrapping the city in shadow. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against rooftops and turning the streets into dark rivers. Alara made her way to the overlook, a place perched above the city where the lights below flickered like fireflies. She shivered, not just from the cold, but from anticipation. Dante was already there, leaning against the stone railing, his coat catching the wind like a dark banner. When he saw her, he straightened, his usual composure intact, his eyes dark and endless, softened ever so slightly when they met hers. "You came," he said, his voice low, almost a growl beneath the rain. "I wanted to see," Alara replied, her voice small but steady. "I had to know why you called me here." He studied her, expression unreadable, then gestured toward the city below. "Look at it. Beautiful, isn't it? And dangerous. Every shadow has a story. Every light hides a secret. That is this city, and my life." Alara shivered as she gazed down at the streets. She had never noticed how the city seemed alive at night, how danger and beauty wove together in patterns she could almost feel. "It's mesmerizing," she whispered. "Like a chessboard," Dante said, his gaze fixed on her. "And we are all pieces, moving in ways we cannot always control. Some of us, however, choose to move differently, to bend the rules." His words sent a chill down her spine, yet she could not turn away. There was something intoxicating about his presence, something that whispered of danger, but also of trust, an impossible combination. For hours, they walked along the rooftops and narrow alleys, Dante guiding her through parts of the city few outsiders ever saw. He spoke little of himself, yet every word carried weight. He was patient, precise, yet there was a current of something unspoken, power, responsibility, and a hint of darkness she could almost touch. "You move through the world without fear," Dante said finally, stopping to look at her in the rain. "It's unusual. Most would have turned back hours ago." Alara smiled faintly, shivering. "Perhaps I am not like most people." "Perhaps," he said, letting the word linger between them. He stepped closer, the distance charged with a magnetic tension neither could deny. "Or perhaps you are exactly what I've been waiting for, without knowing it." Alara felt her chest tighten. His gaze held her, a promise and a warning at once. She wanted to speak, but the words lodged in her throat. For the first time, she realized how deeply she had already been drawn into his world, how impossible it would be to step back now. As they walked, shadows seemed to stretch and move along the walls, and Alara could not shake the feeling of being watched. A shiver ran through her as she realized that the faint sense of unease she had felt in the ballroom had not been imaginary. There were forces at work here that she did not yet understand. "Do you ever wonder," Dante said quietly, almost to himself, "what it would be like to live a life free of all this, free of power, of duty, of shadows?" Alara considered him. "Yes," she admitted softly, "but I think we cannot always escape what we are, or who we meet." He nodded, his eyes darkening with thought. "True. And sometimes the people we meet are not meant to make life easier. They are meant to test us, to change us." Alara's heart skipped. She felt as if he were speaking directly to her soul, revealing truths she had not dared face. She had entered this night curious, nervous, and hopeful. Now, she felt caught in a tide she could not control, swept along by currents she did not fully understand. They stopped on a quiet bridge, the rain falling harder, the city below blurred by mist and light. Dante turned to her, the wind tugging at his coat. "There are things I cannot tell you yet," he said, voice low, "not because I do not trust you, but because some truths can change everything." Ilara reached out instinctively, her fingers brushing his arm. "Then let me face them with you," she said, surprising even herself. For a moment, Dante said nothing, his dark eyes locked on hers. Then, slowly, he allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Perhaps," he whispered, "perhaps you are braver than I imagined." The tension between them was electric, yet fragile. It was the kind of connection that could ignite or destroy, a thread pulled taut between danger and desire. Ilara felt a thrill and a fear so sharp she could hardly breathe. Suddenly, movement at the edge of the bridge caught her eye. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, a figure watching, silent but deliberate. Ilara's stomach twisted, her heart hammering. She realized with a jolt that the sense of being followed, of being observed, was real. She was not alone, and the danger Dante had hinted at was closer than she had imagined. Dante's gaze flicked toward the shadow, his expression hardening in an instant. In that moment, the charming, enigmatic man she had been drawn to became something more, a protector, a force to be reckoned with. He stepped in front of her instinctively, his stance widening and his eyes narrowed on the unseen observer. "Ilara," he said, voice calm but edged with warning, "you need to trust me. Whatever comes, we face it together." Her fingers found his hand, gripping it tightly. "I trust you," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. They watched the shadow for a long moment, the rain masking its movements until it finally slipped away, vanishing into the night. The city seemed quieter, yet the tension lingered like smoke in the air. Ilara realized that her life, once ordinary and predictable, had changed irrevocably. Dante turned back to her, his expression softening, almost wistful. "You see now," he said, "why I cannot tell you everything yet. Some truths are like fire. They burn if handled too soon." Ilara nodded, understanding more than the words themselves conveyed. "Then I will wait," she said softly, "and I will stand by you, whatever comes." He studied her, and for the first time, a flicker of vulnerability passed across his face. "You are remarkable," he said quietly, "and dangerous too. You do not know what you are stepping into." "I know enough," she replied. "I know that I want to be here, with you." A faint smile touched his lips, and for a moment, the storm, the shadows, the city below, all of it, seemed suspended in perfect stillness. Two people, bound by curiosity, attraction, and an invisible thread of fate, stood together against the unknown. But the shadow in the city had not vanished completely. Somewhere unseen, someone, or something, had marked her. Ilara was no longer simply a visitor in Dante's world. She was now part of it, whether she was ready or not. The night ended with rain soaking through her clothes, hearts racing, and the unspoken knowledge that life as she knew it was gone. She had touched the edge of danger and desire and had chosen to step further in. Cliffhanger. As Dante led her safely back to her door, a whisper carried through the rain, a warning in the darkness, almost lost to the storm. The observer from the shadows had followed her home. Ilara would awaken tomorrow to a world where the line between love and danger had begun to blur, and nothing would ever be the same. The city was quiet that morning, but the calm was deceiving. Shadows lingered in alleys, and the faint echo of footsteps followed Ilara wherever she went. She had tried to go about her day normally, but the sense of being watched never left her. Every time she glanced over her shoulder, she felt the invisible thread of danger tighten around her, reminding her that the world she had stepped into with Dante was far from ordinary. When the knock came at her door that evening, she did not hesitate. It was Dante. He looked different from the charming man she had met in the ballroom and walked with her through the rain-soaked streets. Tonight, there was no playful conversation, only quiet purpose. "Ilara," he said, his voice firm yet gentle, "I need to show you why I asked you to trust me." She nodded, gripping his hand as he led her through narrow passageways and to a hidden courtyard. The air was thick with mist, and the flickering lanterns cast dancing shadows across the cobblestones. Here, in the quiet heart of the city, Dante finally revealed a glimpse of the world he commanded, a world of loyalty, power, and unseen danger. "Look around," he said, gesturing to the courtyard. "This is just one part of it. Every street, every building, every person has a role. Some are friends, some are enemies, and some are neither. They are shadows, waiting for a chance." Ilara's eyes widened. She had known he was involved in something serious, something dangerous. But seeing it firsthand made her chest tighten. Yet despite the fear curling in her stomach, she felt a thrill. This was his world, and he was letting her in. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you are part of it now," he replied, his dark eyes holding hers. "And because you deserve to understand the choices I make. I cannot protect you if you do not see the truth." They walked in silence for a while, the sound of rain and distant city life surrounding them. Then Dante stopped at a high balcony overlooking the heart of the city. Below, the streets glimmered wet and alive, filled with unseen movements and whispered conversations. "Do you see it?" he asked, his voice soft but filled with gravity. "This is not just a city, it is a world of oaths, of loyalty, of blood. And I am bound to it by everything my family has built." Ilara's hand found his, and she squeezed it gently. "Then let me stand with you," she said. "Whatever comes, I will not turn away." For the first time, Dante's expression softened completely. There was no mask, no guarded poise. Only a man who had carried weight far too heavy for his years, suddenly realizing that someone had chosen to face it with him. "You are brave," he said quietly, "perhaps braver than I deserve." The moment was fragile, suspended in time, but the peace shattered with a sudden sharp sound, a door crashing open somewhere below. Figures moved through the mist, shadows emerging with purpose. Ilara's stomach dropped. "Stay behind me," Dante commanded, stepping forward, the fluidity of his movements showing the precision of a man trained to handle danger. Ilara's heart raced as the figures approached, emissaries from a rival faction, their intent clear. They had come for leverage, for fear, for control. But Dante's presence was a force that seemed to bend the very air around him. Calm yet unyielding, he faced the intruders with a quiet authority that left no room for negotiation. "Leave," he said, his voice a low command, not a request. The leader of the intruders smirked, thinking his numbers and courage would intimidate Dante. He had underestimated the man completely. In a blink, Dante's movements were precise, deliberate, and unyielding. He protected Ilara not with anger, but with a measured, unstoppable force. Ilara watched, breath caught in her throat, fear and admiration intertwined in her chest. She realized that this man, the man who had captivated her with his charm and intelligence, was someone who could navigate a world she could never have imagined. And yet, in his strength, she also saw vulnerability. A man bound by duty, by family, by blood, and perhaps by loneliness. When the intruders finally retreated into the shadows, Dante turned to her. His coat was damp from the rain, his expression intense but controlled. "Are you unharmed?" he asked, concern threading his voice. "Yes," she said, though her hands still trembled. "Because you were there." He reached for her, brushing wet hair from her face. "I promised," he murmured, "that I would protect you, and I meant it." The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and the city below reflected the golden lantern light, almost magical in its quiet aftermath. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Alara realized that despite the danger, despite the shadows that stalked her, she had never felt more alive. "You could have left," she said softly, "but you didn't. Why?" Dante's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Because I couldn't," he said simply. "And because I realized something. You are not just part of my life by chance. You are part of me, and perhaps part of a path I have been waiting to find." Ilara felt the words settle deep in her chest. For all the darkness, all the danger, there was a truth here she could not deny. She was drawn to him, and he to her. They were connected in a way that transcended the ordinary. They stood together on the balcony as the rain ceased, the city shimmering beneath them. Dante took her hand, and this time she did not resist. Instead, she allowed herself to be drawn closer, to feel the warmth and strength of the man she had met by mistake in a crowded hall, now revealed in his full complexity. "I don't know what the future holds," Dante said, his voice almost a whisper. "But I know this. I will not let anything harm you. Not while I can stop it." Ilara leaned against him, feeling the weight of his promise and the reality of the storm they had faced together. "Then I will stand with you," she said again, with quiet certainty. "Whatever comes, I will not turn away." For the first time, Dante allowed himself a small smile, one that was free of masks, free of pretense. It was a smile that spoke of hope, of connection, of the possibility of love, even in a world built on shadows and power. But the night was not yet over. From the streets below, a figure watched them silently, hidden in shadow, and the knowledge that Ilara was now marked could not be denied. This was a world of unfinished stories, of battles yet to be fought, and of secrets that might never be revealed. And yet, as Dante held her hand and she leaned into his strength, there was a sense of transformation. Two souls entwined, ready to face whatever came next, bound by trust, courage, and a love that had begun in the most unlikely of places. The city stretched below them, vast and unknowable, yet for one small moment, Ilara felt safe. Safe, not because the world had changed, but because she had chosen to face it with him. Cliffhanger, resolution. As the first light of dawn began to touch the rooftops, Dante and Ilara knew that danger was not gone, only delayed. Somewhere in the city, the observer from the shadows lingered, and a new chapter of challenges awaited. Yet for now they stood together, united against the darkness, and bound by a bond that neither time nor threat could break.